The boarding door stands open. Passengers stream down the jet bridge, rolling carry-on bags, checking seat assignments on their phones, settling into their seats for what should be a routine afternoon flight. In the flight deck, two pilots complete their pre-flight checks, running through checklists, programming the flight management computer, reviewing weather data. Everything appears normal, professional, exactly as it should be. But in the terminal behind them, airport security officers are watching surveillance monitors with growing concern. They have been tracking one of those pilots for the past 20 minutes. His behavior has been strange, inconsistent, suspicious. They have made phone calls, they have reviewed footage. They have found something in a bathroom that has convinced them they need to act immediately before this aircraft pushes back from the gate. Within minutes, uniformed police officers will walk down that jet bridge. They will enter the flight deck, and they will place one of the pilots under arrest, removing him from the aircraft in handcuffs in front of shocked passengers and crew members. The flight will be cancelled. An entire plane load of travelers will be stranded, and one pilot's career will be destroyed in the most public way imaginable. I am Captain Paul Henderson. In 25 years of flying, I have seen many things that passengers never witness. I have seen pilots make mistakes. I have seen them push through fatigue and illness. I have seen them struggle with personal problems that followed them into the cockpit. But what I am about to share with you today represents one of the most fundamental violations of trust in aviation. A pilot who showed up to work impaired and tried to hide it until the very last moment. This is the story of what happened at Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport on a summer afternoon in 2019, when the safety systems we have built into commercial aviation were tested and, thankfully, worked exactly as designed. Welcome aboard. July 16, 2019, a Tuesday afternoon. Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport hums with the usual midsummer travel rush. Terminal 1 is crowded with vacationers heading to beach destinations, business travelers making connections, families visiting relatives. The security checkpoints are busy. Gate areas are packed. The airport is operating at near capacity, which means any disruption to the schedule creates a cascade of delays. At Gate 17, United Airlines Flight 4792 is preparing for departure to Phoenix, Arizona. A 3-hour flight southwest across the Great Plains and into the desert. The aircraft is a Boeing 737-800, configured for 162 passengers. It is a workhorse of the domestic fleet, reliable and efficient, exactly the kind of aircraft that completes thousands of routine flights every single day. The crew for this flight consists of 2 pilots and 4 flight attendants. Captain Richard Morrison is the pilot in command. He is 51 years old with over 14,000 hours of flight time. He has been with United for 19 years. His record is clean. His performance reviews consistently good. He is the kind of steady, experienced captain that airlines depend on. The first officer scheduled for this flight is Thomas Caldwell, 39 years old. He lives in Minneapolis, which means this is a trip starting from his home base. He does not need to commute from another city or stay in a crew hotel. He will simply drive to the airport, park in the employee lot and report for duty. Caldwell has been flying for United for 7 years. He has approximately 4,000 hours of total flight time, with 1,600 hours in the 737. On paper, his qualifications are solid. His training record shows satisfactory performance. His line checks have revealed no deficiencies. There is nothing in his file that would raise any red flags. But today something is very wrong with First Officer Thomas Caldwell, and that wrongness is about to be exposed in the most dramatic way possible. The day begins normally enough. Caldwell wakes in his home in a Minneapolis suburb. He showers, dresses in his uniform, gathers his flight bag with his charts and manuals. He drives to the airport, fighting through afternoon traffic, listening to music on the radio. To any observer, he would appear to be just another pilot heading to work. But Caldwell is carrying a secret. The night before, he made a terrible decision. He went to a bar, he had drinks, multiple drinks, beer and vodka, mixing them in quantities that he should have known would leave him impaired the following day. Whether this was a one-time lapse in judgment or part of a pattern, we do not know. But what we do know is that on this particular day, Thomas Caldwell is not fit to fly. He arrives at the airport at approximately 2:30 in the afternoon. His flight is scheduled to depart at 4:15, which gives him plenty of time to complete his pre-flight duties. He parks in the employee lot and takes the shuttle bus to the terminal. He enters through the employee entrance and proceeds to the known crew member checkpoint, the special security lane that allows pilots and flight attendants to bypass the regular passenger screening. The known crew member system, or KCM, is designed to streamline the security process for airline employees. Pilots and flight attendants go through extensive background checks and vetting. They are considered trusted personnel, so rather than making them remove shoes and laptops and go through the same screening as passengers, they simply present their employee identification, scan their credentials, and proceed directly to their gates. Caldwell approaches the KCM checkpoint. He presents his United Airlines identification and his pilot certificate. The security officer scans his credentials. Everything checks out. The officer waves him through with a polite nod. "Have a good flight, sir." Caldwell proceeds into the secure area of the terminal. So far, so good. He has passed through security without incident. But he knows something that the security officer does not know. He knows that he consumed significant amounts of alcohol less than 12 hours ago. He knows that Federal Aviation Administration regulations prohibit pilots from flying within 8 hours of consuming alcohol. He knows that even after 8 hours, if there is any measurable alcohol remaining in his system, he is prohibited from acting as a crew member. And he knows, though he may be trying not to think about it, that he is probably still impaired. He walks through the terminal toward Gate 17. His uniform is slightly rumpled. His appearance is somewhat disheveled. To a casual observer, he might just look like someone who had a long day. But to trained security personnel, something about him seems off. As he approaches the gate area, he encounters something he did not expect. Airport security officers are conducting a random secondary screening near the gate. This is not part of the regular security checkpoint. This is an additional layer, a random check that can happen anywhere in the secure area. Passengers and crew members can be selected at random for additional screening of their bags and persons. Caldwell sees the security officers ahead. He hesitates. A normal crew member would simply walk up, allow their bag to be searched, and continue on their way. It is a minor inconvenience, nothing more. But Caldwell does not walk up. He stops. He looks uncertain. The security officers notice his hesitation immediately. One of the officers gestures to him. "Sir, we need to do a quick bag check." Caldwell does not comply. Instead, he turns and walks in a different direction, moving away from the gate. He strikes up a conversation with other security personnel standing nearby, as if testing whether he can avoid the screening. But the officers conducting the random check are persistent. They follow him, repeating their request. Caldwell realizes he cannot avoid them, but instead of allowing the screening, he makes another decision. He tells the officers he needs to use the restroom first. They allow this, assuming he will return momentarily. Caldwell takes an escalator down to a lower level. He enters a public restroom, and inside that restroom he makes a choice that will ultimately seal his fate. He pulls a large bottle from his flight bag, a vodka bottle nearly 2 liters in size, not a small airplane-sized bottle, a full-size liquor store purchase. He empties what remains in the bottle into the sink or toilet, then stuffs the bottle deep into the trash receptacle, covering it with paper towels. He washes his hands, straightens his uniform as best he can, and returns upstairs. But what Caldwell does not know is that his behavior has now triggered multiple alarm bells. The security officers who witnessed his hesitation, his avoidance, his detour to the restroom have reported their observations to their supervisors. Airport surveillance cameras have tracked his movements. Security personnel are reviewing the footage, piecing together his timeline. When Caldwell returns, he allows the bag check to proceed. Nothing suspicious is found in his flight bag. The security officers let him go. He proceeds to Gate 17, where Captain Morrison is already in the flight deck completing pre-flight duties. Caldwell enters the aircraft, walks down the narrow aisle, and steps into the flight deck. He greets Morrison, stows his bag, and takes his seat in the right-hand chair. To Captain Morrison, everything seems normal. His first officer has arrived on time and appears ready to work. But behind the scenes, a very different situation is unfolding. Airport police have been notified. Security supervisors have described Caldwell's behavior, the disheveled appearance, the resistance to screening, the detour to the bathroom. Officers review the surveillance footage, confirming the timeline. And then they make a decision. They will check that bathroom. In the restroom on the lower level, officers search the trash receptacle where Caldwell was seen standing. And there, stuffed beneath paper towels, they find it. A large vodka bottle, nearly empty, the cap still slightly wet. The officers bag it as evidence and immediately contact their supervisor. Now the situation has escalated dramatically. They have a pilot currently sitting in the cockpit of an aircraft preparing for departure, and they have evidence suggesting he may have been drinking shortly before reporting for duty. The timeline is tight. Passengers are boarding. The departure is scheduled for less than an hour from now. If they are going to act, they need to act immediately. The police make contact with United Airlines operations. They explain the situation. United's response is immediate and unequivocal. Remove that pilot from the aircraft. Do not let that plane push back. Back at gate 17, passengers continue boarding. They find their seats, stow their bags, settle in for the flight to Phoenix. Some are heading home, some are starting vacations. Some have business meetings. They are thinking about their destinations, not about the two men in the flight deck preparing to fly them there. In the cockpit, Captain Morrison and First Officer Caldwell are running through their checklists. Morrison programs the flight management computer with the route. Caldwell reviews the weather forecast for Phoenix. They discuss fuel load and alternate airports. Everything is proceeding normally. And then 3 uniformed police officers appear in the flight deck door. Captain Morrison looks up, surprised. Police officers in the cockpit are extremely unusual. His first thought is probably that there is some kind of security threat, a problem with a passenger perhaps. One of the officers, a detective, addresses Caldwell directly. "Sir, we need to speak with you for a moment." Caldwell's face pales slightly, but he maintains his composure. "What's this about?" The detective's voice is calm but firm. "Sir, we've been reviewing some security footage. We have some questions about your activities before boarding. Would you be willing to step off the aircraft and speak with us?" This is the moment where Caldwell could make a smart decision. He could recognize that the situation is unraveling. He could cooperate. He could step off the aircraft quietly, before passengers see anything, before this becomes a spectacle. But he does not do that. "I'm fine," Caldwell says. "I'm ready to fly. There's no problem here." The detective tries a different approach, offering Caldwell a way out. "Sir, if you're not feeling well, if you'd like to go home sick, we can arrange that. No one needs to make this into a bigger issue than it needs to be." It is a lifeline, a chance for Caldwell to exit gracefully, to claim he is feeling unwell, to avoid arrest. But again, Caldwell refuses. "I'm not sick, I'm fine, I'm staying." Captain Morrison is watching this exchange with growing alarm. He does not know what is happening, but he knows it is serious. Police officers do not board aircraft and question pilots unless something significant has occurred. The detective's tone becomes more formal. "Sir, we have evidence that suggests you may be impaired. We need you to submit to a breathalyzer test. You can do it voluntarily here, or we can arrest you and do it at the station. Your choice." Caldwell realizes, finally, that he has no way out. He stands slowly. The detective produces handcuffs. And there, in the confined space of the flight deck, with Captain Morrison watching in shock, First Officer Thomas Caldwell is placed under arrest. "You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda warning echoes in the small cockpit. Caldwell, his face now drained of color, allows the officers to cuff his wrists behind his back. Before they lead him out, he removes his pilot cap and replaces it with a plain baseball cap from his flight bag, as if this small disguise might prevent passengers from recognizing what is happening. The officers escort him out of the cockpit. They walk him through the cabin. Passengers stare. Some pull out phones, filming the surreal scene of a uniformed pilot being led off an aircraft in handcuffs. Questions ripple through the cabin. What's happening? Is that a pilot? Why are they arresting him? The flight attendants, equally shocked, have no answers to give. They have no idea what just happened. All they know is that their first officer has just been arrested. At the gate, the scene becomes even more chaotic. Other passengers waiting to board see the pilot being escorted through the terminal by police. Video footage begins appearing on social media within minutes. By the time Caldwell reaches the airport police station, the incident is already going viral. Back at the aircraft, Captain Morrison is on the phone with United Operations. The flight is cancelled. There is no replacement first officer available on such short notice. All passengers must deplane. The airline will rebook them on later flights. It is a logistical nightmare, but there is no alternative. Passengers are furious. They have places to be, connections to make, hotels reserved. But slowly, grudgingly, they gather their belongings and exit the aircraft. As they file past the open cockpit door, many glance inside, trying to understand what could have caused such a dramatic disruption. At the police station, Caldwell is processed. He is read his rights again. He is asked if he will voluntarily submit to a breathalyzer test. Knowing that refusal will result in immediate license suspension and likely make matters worse, he agrees. The breathalyzer is administered. The device analyzes his breath. The results appear on the screen. 0.063, well above the FAA limit of 0.04 for pilots, well above the threshold that would allow him to safely operate an aircraft. Confronted with this evidence, Caldwell's story begins to change. Initially, he claims he had not consumed alcohol in days, but faced with the breathalyzer results, he admits that he drank the night before. He claims he thought enough time had passed, that he believed he was sober enough to fly. He insists he did not intend to operate the aircraft while impaired, but the police are not buying it. They have the vodka bottle from the bathroom. They have surveillance footage showing him attempting to avoid screening. They have his initial lies and evasions. The evidence is overwhelming. Caldwell is charged with attempting to operate an aircraft while under the influence of alcohol. It is a federal offense, carrying serious penalties including prison time and permanent loss of his pilot certificates. Blood is drawn for additional testing. Unlike a breathalyzer, which measures alcohol in the breath and can be affected by recent consumption, blood testing provides a definitive measurement of blood alcohol content. The results will take weeks to process, but they will provide the final, incontrovertible evidence of Caldwell's impairment. For me, sitting here reviewing this case years later, what strikes me most is not the fact that a pilot showed up to work after drinking. Sadly, that happens. Pilots are human beings, and human beings sometimes make terrible decisions. Alcoholism exists in every profession, including aviation. What shocks me is the deception, the lying, the active attempts to hide his condition and proceed with the flight. At multiple points, Caldwell had opportunities to do the right thing. He could have called in sick that morning. He could have admitted to the security officers that he was not fit to fly. He could have accepted the detective's offer to leave the aircraft voluntarily. But at every decision point, he chose to double down, to insist he was fine, to try to push through. And that to me is unforgivable, because it demonstrates not just poor judgment, but a fundamental lack of integrity. It shows a willingness to endanger others to protect himself. It shows that when faced with a choice between safety and self-interest, he chose self-interest. Let me explain something about alcohol and flying. The FAA regulation is clear. Pilots cannot consume alcohol within 8 hours of flying and cannot fly with any measurable amount of alcohol in their system. This is known as the 8 hours bottle to throttle rule, but most professional pilots will tell you that 8 hours is the bare minimum. The real standard is more like 24 hours, especially if you had more than a couple drinks. Why? Because alcohol affects judgment, reaction time, coordination, and decision-making. At altitude, these effects can be magnified. In an emergency situation where split-second decisions determine whether people live or die, even slight impairment can be catastrophic. Airlines and the FAA take this extremely seriously. Random alcohol testing is common. Pilots can be tested at any time without warning, and the consequences of failing a test are severe. Immediate suspension, likely termination, possible criminal charges. But beyond the regulations and the testing, there is a professional and ethical obligation. When you put on that uniform and sit in that cockpit, 150 people in the back are trusting you with their lives. That is not hyperbole. That is literal truth. They are betting their lives that you are sober, alert, competent, and focused. In the weeks following his arrest, Caldwell's blood test results came back. They confirmed what the breathalyzer had shown. His blood alcohol content was significantly above the legal limit for pilots. He was formally charged with a federal crime. He eventually pleaded guilty. His sentence included a weekend in jail, home detention, probation, and mandatory alcohol treatment. But the real punishment was the destruction of his career. His pilot certificates were revoked by the FAA. United Airlines terminated his employment. His reputation was destroyed. He became a cautionary tale, a name mentioned in pilot training sessions as an example of what not to do. Can a pilot come back from something like this? Theoretically, yes. The FAA has a program called Human Intervention Motivation Study, or HIMSS, which provides a path for pilots struggling with substance abuse to get treatment and potentially return to flying. But it is a long, difficult road involving years of monitoring, regular testing, counseling, and peer support. Many pilots who enter HIMSS never return to the cockpit, and those who do carry the stigma for the rest of their careers. The tragedy here is that if Caldwell had sought help before this incident, he might have kept his career. If he had called his chief pilot the night before and said, "I made a mistake, I was drinking, I need help," the airline would have supported him. He would have been placed in treatment. His job would have been protected, there would have been supervision and monitoring, but there would also have been compassion and support. But by showing up to fly while impaired, by lying about it, by trying to hide it until the very end, he left the airline no choice but to terminate him and the FAA no choice but to revoke his licenses. Let me tell you what I learned from this case, because these lessons apply to every pilot, every flight, every day. First, the system works. Random screenings, alert security personnel, rapid police response. These layers of protection exist for a reason. On this day, they prevented a potentially catastrophic situation. Those passengers never got airborne with an impaired pilot. The system caught the problem before it could become a disaster. Second, judgment is everything. Caldwell's biggest mistake was not drinking the night before. His biggest mistake was deciding to fly anyway, and then lying about it when confronted. One bad decision led to another, and another, until his career was destroyed. Third, asking for help is not weakness. Aviation culture values professionalism and competence. Admitting that you have a problem, whether it is alcohol or stress or depression or anything else, can feel like admitting failure. But hiding problems is far more dangerous than revealing them. The industry has support systems in place precisely because we recognize that pilots are human beings who sometimes struggle. Fourth, passenger trust is fragile. When that video of a pilot being arrested went viral, it damaged public confidence in aviation safety. Most pilots are professional, dedicated, safety-conscious individuals who would never dream of flying impaired. But one bad actor can tarnish the reputation of thousands. United Airlines Flight 4792 never became a disaster. It never crashed. No one was injured. But it easily could have been different. If the security officers had not been paying attention, if Caldwell had successfully avoided the screening, if he had made it to Phoenix, what might have happened? Would he have made a critical error on approach? Would he have failed to respond appropriately to an emergency? We will never know, and we should be grateful for that. This case reminds us that aviation safety depends not just on technology and regulations, but on the integrity of the people wearing the uniform. When that integrity fails, when someone prioritizes their own interests over the safety of their passengers, the entire system is threatened. If you are a pilot and you are struggling with alcohol or any other substance, please, I beg you, get help. Call your chief pilot, call your union, call the HIMSS program. Do not try to hide it. Do not try to fly through it. The consequences of being honest may seem frightening, but they are nothing compared to the consequences of causing an accident. And if you are a passenger, understand that incidents like this are extraordinarily rare. The vast majority of pilots take their responsibilities seriously. They show up sober, rested, focused, and committed to getting you safely to your destination. The system is designed with multiple layers of protection to catch problems before they become disasters. That system worked on July 16, 2019. I am Captain Paul Henderson. Thank you for flying with me today through this difficult but important story. Remember that safety in aviation is built on honesty, integrity, and the willingness of professionals to do the right thing even when it is hard. Fly safe, stay honest, and never compromise on safety. Until next time, this is Captain Paul Henderson signing off.